Speed's Edge, The Racer's Path. Chapter 1. The Dream Ignites. Alex Turner always felt out of place in his quiet suburban town, nestled between rolling hills and vast, empty fields. Life moved slowly here, with days bleeding into weeks in a monotonous rhythm. But Alex's heart beat to a different drum, a drum that roared with the sound of engines and the thrill of speed. From a young age, Alex was captivated by cars. His father, a former mechanic, had an old garage filled with relics from his past, a collection of rusted car parts, greasy tools, and faded posters of racing legends. Alex spent countless hours there, listening to his father's stories of races won and lost, of the camaraderie in the pits, and the intoxicating scent of burning rubber. His father had once been a promising driver, but a crash had ended his career before it truly began. He never talked about it much, but the lingering sadness in his eyes whenever he looked at the track was enough for Alex to understand. One day, while rummaging through a dusty drawer in the garage, Alex found an old video of one of his father's races. The grainy footage showed a younger version of his dad, helmet on, focused, waiting for the light to turn green. When the race began, Alex was glued to the screen, watching as his father navigated the track with incredible precision. The roar of the engine, the speed, the danger, it all ignited something deep within him. From that moment, Alex knew he was destined to race. Chapter 2. The First Step. As Alex grew older, his love for racing only intensified. He devoured every bit of information he could find: books, documentaries, and anything else related to motorsports. He spent his evenings playing racing simulators, pushing virtual cars to their limits, dreaming of the day he could sit behind the wheel of a real one. But the reality of racing was far from his reach. His family didn't have the money to support such an expensive hobby, and the nearest racetrack was miles away. Alex's father, seeing the fire in his son's eyes, began teaching him everything he knew about cars. Together, they rebuilt an old go-kart from the garage, piecing it together with whatever they could find. It wasn't much, but for Alex, it was a start. The day the kart was finally ready, Alex could barely contain his excitement. He donned an old helmet that was a bit too big, tightened his grip on the steering wheel, and felt the rumble of the engine beneath him. As he tore down the makeshift track they had set up in a nearby field, he felt a rush of exhilaration unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was as if the world melted away, leaving only the roar of the engine and the blur of the landscape around him. It wasn't a professional race, but in that moment, Alex was a racer. Chapter 3. Opportunity Knocks. Years passed, and Alex honed his skills with every opportunity he could find. He raced in local competitions, gaining a reputation as a fearless driver with raw talent. His father's garage became a hub for enthusiasts, all drawn to the young prodigy who could make even the most battered car fly. But despite his growing fame, Alex knew that if he wanted to go further, he needed more than just skill. He needed a real car, real equipment, and most of all, a real chance. That chance came in the form of an unexpected visit. One afternoon, while Alex was working on an engine, a sleek black car pulled up to the garage. A man stepped out, impeccably dressed, with an air of authority. He introduced himself as Marcus Reed, a talent scout for one of the most prestigious racing academies in the country. "I've been hearing about you, Alex," Marcus said, circling the go-kart that had been Alex's pride and joy. "Word is, you've got potential. Raw, but undeniable." Alex's heart raced. Could this be the break he had been waiting for? "I represent Apex Racing Academy," Marcus continued. "We train the best, and only the best. I'd like to offer you a spot, but you'll have to prove yourself. There's a qualifying race in 2 weeks. Win it, and the spot is it." With his father's encouragement and the help of the local community, Alex prepared like never before. The car was upgraded to its maximum potential, every bolt and screw tightened to perfection. The days leading up to the race were a blur of practice and adrenaline, but Alex felt more focused than ever. Chapter 4. The Qualifier. The day of the qualifier arrived, and Alex found himself standing on the grid, surrounded by some of the best young drivers in the region. The tension in the air was palpable, the sound of engines revving a thunderous symphony that echoed through the valley. As the lights turned green, Alex's world narrowed to the track in front of him. Every corner, every straight, every opponent was a test of his skill and determination. He pushed the cart to its limits, taking risks that others wouldn't dare. The tires screeched, the engine roared, and for a moment, it seemed like the cart would fall apart under the strain. But Alex held it together, feeling the machine become an extension of himself. Lap after lap, he fought his way through the pack. His hands gripped the wheel tightly, sweat dripping down his face, but his mind was clear. He had trained for this, prepared for this, and he wouldn't let it slip away. As the final lap approached, Alex found himself in third place, the leaders just ahead of him. He knew this was his last chance. With a burst of speed, he closed the gap, his eyes fixed on the final corner. The leader, a seasoned racer with far more experience, took the corner wide, trying to maintain speed. But Alex saw his opening. He took the inside line, squeezing past with inches to spare. The crowd erupted in cheers as he crossed the finish line, a fraction of a second ahead. He had done it. He had qualified. Chapter 5: Apex Racing Academy. The win earned Alex more than just a spot at Apex Racing Academy. It earned him respect. He arrived at the academy, nestled in the mountains, where the best of the best trained under the watchful eyes of experienced instructors. The facilities were state-of-the-art, the tracks varied and challenging, and the competition fierce. Alex was placed in a dorm with other newcomers, all of whom had impressive backgrounds. Some had been karting since they could walk, others had family connections to the racing world, but none had the raw passion that drove Alex. Training was rigorous, with days filled with physical conditioning, technical lessons, and endless laps around the academy's tracks. Alex learned about aerodynamics, tire management, race strategies, and more. But most importantly, he learned how to push himself beyond his limits. His mentor, a former Formula One driver named Ethan Hayes, saw something in Alex that reminded him of his younger self. Chapter 6: Rising Tensions. As the months passed, Lucas. One day, after a particularly heated race, Lucas confro. Alex, usual.
Luc, that.
Taking Ethan's advice to heart, Alex channeled his frustration into his training. He knew that the only way to silence his critics was to keep winning. Chapter 7: The Championship continued. The days leading up to the championship were a whirlwind of preparation. Alex spent every waking hour on the track, fine-tuning his skills and pushing his limits. The academy's instructors noticed his dedication, and even Ethan, who was usually reserved in his praise, acknowledged Alex's progress. Remember, Ethan told him on the eve of the race, racing isn't just about speed. It's about control, strategy, and knowing when to take risks. Keep your head cool and trust your instincts. The morning of the championship dawned bright and clear, with a sky the color of burnished steel. The atmosphere at the track was electric, the air thick with anticipation. Spectators filled the stands, and scouts from various racing teams were present, their eyes keenly focused on the young talent that would soon be showcased. Alex stood at the starting grid, his heart pounding in his chest. He could see Lucas a few rows ahead, adjusting his helmet and glaring back at him. The rivalry between them had become the talk of the academy, and everyone knew this race would be the ultimate test. The roar of the engines filled the air as the racers prepared to start. Alex gripped the steering wheel, feeling the vibrations through his fingers. The countdown began. 5 seconds felt like an eternity. Then, in a flash of green lights, the race was on. Alex launched off the line with a burst of speed, quickly maneuvering his car into a favorable position. The track was a demanding one, with sharp turns, elevation changes, and a mix of fast straights and technical sections. It was designed to test every aspect of a driver's skill, and Alex was determined to master it. The first few laps were a blur of motion and noise. Alex focused on maintaining his position, conserving his tires, and finding his rhythm. Lucas, as expected, was leading the pack, his driving aggressive and precise. But Alex kept close, watching and waiting for an opportunity. As the race progressed, the tension mounted. Drivers began to make mistakes, pushing too hard or misjudging corners. Alex capitalized on these errors, moving up the ranks with calculated precision. His kart handled beautifully, a testament to the hours he and his father had spent tuning it to perfection. By the halfway point, Alex was in third place, with only Lucas and another top driver, Max, ahead of him. The three of them were locked in a battle for supremacy, each lap more intense than the last. Alex could feel the pressure building, but he kept Ethan's words in mind: control, strategy, and instinct. As they approached the final laps, Alex knew it was time to make his move. He could see Lucas was starting to push too hard, his car skidding slightly on the corners. Max, on the other hand, was driving cautiously, perhaps too cautiously. Alex decided to take advantage of the situation. On a particularly tricky corner, where the track dipped sharply before rising again, Alex saw his chance. Max took the corner too wide, leaving just enough room on the inside. Alex didn't hesitate. He dove into the gap, his tires barely gripping the edge of the track as he shot past Max and into second place. Now only Lucas stood between him and victory. Chapter 8. The Final Lap. With just a few laps to go, the race had reached its climax. The crowd was on its feet, watching the duel between Alex and Lucas. It was clear that this would be a battle of wills, and neither driver was willing to give an inch. Lucas, sensing Alex's approach, began to drive more defensively, blocking Alex's attempts to pass. It was a dangerous game, and one mistake could end it all. But Alex wasn't deterred. He studied Lucas's movements, looking for a pattern, a weakness he could exploit. The final lap began, and the tension was unbearable. Alex was right on Lucas's tail, the two cars practically touching. As they sped down the final straight, Alex knew this was his last chance. The last corner was a tight hairpin, notorious for catching drivers off guard. Lucas, determined to maintain his lead, braked hard, preparing to take the corner as cleanly as possible. But Alex had other plans. He delayed his braking, keeping his speed higher for just a moment longer. As Lucas entered the corner, Alex made his move. He swung to the outside, carrying more speed than Lucas expected. The tires screamed in protest, and for a split second, it seemed like Alex might lose control. But he held his line, cutting across Lucas's path as they exited the corner. The crowd erupted in cheers as Alex surged ahead, his car crossing the finish line just a fraction of a second before Lucas's. It was a photo finish, but there was no doubt Alex had won. Chapter 9. A New Beginning. The aftermath of the race was a whirlwind. Alex was swarmed by teammates, instructors, and even rival drivers, all offering their congratulations. The victory was not just a personal triumph, but a validation of everything he had worked for. Lucas, though visibly upset, approached Alex after the race. For a moment, the two rivals stood in silence, the tension between them still lingering. But then Lucas extended his hand. "You earned it," he said, grudging respect in his voice. "I'll see you on the track again." Alex shook his hand, knowing that this wouldn't be the last time they'd face each other. But for now, he allowed himself to savor the moment. Later that day, as the sun began to set, Alex found himself alone on the track. The grandstands were empty, the noise of the day fading into a peaceful silence. He stood there, taking it all in: the journey, the struggles, the triumph. This was just the beginning. As he walked back towards the pits, Ethan caught up with him. The older man had a rare smile on his face. "You did well today," Ethan said. "But remember, this is just the first step. The real challenges are still ahead." "I know," Alex replied, feeling a sense of excitement for what's to come. "But I'm ready for them." Ethan nodded. "Good. Because the racing world is about to meet Alex Turner." Chapter 10. The Road Ahead. Winning the championship was a turning point in Alex's life. Offers from various racing teams began to pour in, each one more enticing than the last. The scouts who had watched him race knew they had witnessed the rise of a new star, and they were eager to sign him. After careful consideration, Alex chose to join a rising team with a reputation for nurturing young talent. The team, Eclipse Racing, was known for its innovative approach and focus on developing the next generation of champions. It was the perfect place for Alex to continue his journey. The transition to professional racing was both exhilarating and challenging. The competition was fiercer, the tracks more demanding, and the stakes higher. Alex found himself racing against drivers he had admired for years, now his rivals on the track. But with each race, he grew more confident, more skilled, and more determined to make his mark. His father, though no longer able to race himself, was his biggest supporter. They would spend hours discussing strategies, analyzing races, and working on the cars together whenever Alex had time to visit home. The bond between them, forged through a shared love of racing, was stronger than ever. As the season progressed, Alex's name became more prominent in the racing world. He secured several podium finishes, and his aggressive yet calculated driving style earned him a reputation as a force to be reckoned with. But the ultimate goal, a victory in a major league race, still eluded him. That opportunity came during the final race of the season, a prestigious event that attracted the best drivers from around the world. It was a chance for Alex to prove himself on the biggest stage, to show that he belonged among the elite. Chapter 11. The Ultimate Challenge. The final race took place on a legendary track, known for its complexity and danger. The weather was unpredictable, with rain clouds looming over the horizon, threatening to turn the race into a chaotic battle against the elements. As the drivers prepared for the race, the tension was palpable. This wasn't just another race, it was a test of everything they had learned throughout the season. For Alex, it was the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and dreams. The race started under dry conditions, but the threat of rain hung over the track like a shadow. Alex started in the middle of the pack, his qualifying session hampered by mechanical issues. But he wasn't discouraged. He knew that the real race would be won on the track, not in the qualifying rounds. As the laps unfolded, Alex fought his way through the field, overtaking one car after another. His driving was precise, his focus unbreakable. He took advantage of every opportunity, exploiting the smallest mistakes from his opponents. Then, halfway through the race, the rain began to fall. The track, already challenging, became treacherous. Visibility dropped, and the slick surface caused several drivers to spin out or crash. But Alex, who had trained extensively in wet conditions, saw this as his chance. He adjusted his strategy, braking earlier, accelerating smoothly, and choosing his lines with care. While other drivers struggled, Alex thrived, his car gliding through the rain-soaked track with remarkable control. By the final laps, Alex found himself in second place, with only one car ahead of him. It was Lucas. Their rivalry had come full circle, with both drivers pushing their limits in the most difficult conditions imaginable. Lucas, desperate to win, was driving on the edge, his car sliding dangerously through the corners. Alex, however, remained calm, waiting for the right moment. That moment came on the final lap. Lucas, trying to maintain his lead, pushed too hard into a corner, his car losing traction. Alex seized the opportunity, diving to the inside and powering past him as they exited the corner. The finish line was in sight, and with the rain pouring down, the visibility near zero, Alex kept his foot on the accelerator, his heart pounding. He crossed the finish line a mere car length ahead of Lucas, securing his first major victory. Chapter 12. The Racer's Path. The victory was a defining moment in Alex's career. It wasn't just a win, it was proof that he belonged among the best. The racing world took notice, and Alex Turner was now a name that commanded respect. But for Alex, the journey was far from over. He knew that racing was a constant battle, a battle against time, against rivals, and against oneself. The path he had chosen was difficult, full of challenges and uncertainties. But it was also the path that he loved. As he stood on the podium, drenched in rain and champagne, with the roar of the crowd echoing in his ears, Alex knew that this was just the beginning. There were more races to win, more records to break, and more challenges to face. But no matter what the future held, Alex was ready. Because he was not just a racer. He was a man who had found his passion, who had embraced the thrill of speed, and who would continue to chase the dream, no matter where it took him. And as long as there was a track to race on, Alex Turner would be there, pushing the limits, chasing the edge, and living life at full speed. Epilogue. The legend begins. Years later, as Alex looked back on his career, he realized that it wasn't the victories or the trophies that defined him. It was the journey, the challenges, the failures, the lessons learned, and the people who had supported him along the way. The boy who had once dreamed of speed in a small suburban town had become a legend in the racing world. But he never forgot where he came from, or the passion that had driven him to succeed. And as new generations of racers took to the track, inspired by his story, Alex knew that the legacy of Speed's edge would continue. Because in the world of racing, there was always another race, another challenge, and another dream waiting to be chased.